South Sudan is the world's youngest country, established less than 6 years ago. It's also one of the planet's least developed countries. Violence has displaced more than 2 million people since 2013, leading to famine. For 60 Minutes last night, CBS Evening News anchor Scott Pelley traveled to the East African country. He witnessed humanitarians trying to help 5 million South Sudanese people.
What you see here is about half of one plane load. And each plane load will feed 1,600 people for 30 days. Now, that seems like a lot, except the town of Mayom has 50,000 people who need food. So it's going to take 27 airdrops. The South Sudan emergency response costs $1.5 million a day. We watched that crowd yesterday wait all day for those airdrops.
Right.
And at the end of the day, some of those people left with nothing.
I had to personally reassure several people, don't worry, more food is coming, the planes will keep coming.
Owen Davies and Brian Langdon are from New York. They lead a WFP team that arrives weeks before the airdrop. They gather every member of every family to register for a ration card.
We have to have everybody show up so we know that, the food isn't being misdirected or misused.
What do you mean by that?
You might have a situation where if you dropped, 100 metric tons of food, you don't know how it's being distributed. It might be distributed to their friends. It might get diverted to another community entirely. They might start charging for it. So really the goal is to reduce that by putting it in the hands of every individual household.
The ration card is supposed to be a guarantee, which prevents panic at the drop zone. But after we left Mayom, the fighting erupted again. The airdrops stopped, and 7,000 left with little or nothing.
Scott Pelley joins us at the table. I watched your piece last night, and everywhere you look, it seemed to be one painful story after another. Is there anything that you could say struck you most about the devastation you saw?
Gayle, the isolation of these people for two reasons: because of the civil war that they're suffering under, and also the isolation that was created by the mud, the swamp. Hundreds of years ago, the Arabs named this swamp the Sud, which in Arabic means the barrier. And about half the population of South Sudan is stuck in place about 6 months out of the year. There's no way to drive any kind of a vehicle into that area. It's not accessible by boat by and large, and so these very expensive airdrops are the only way the World Food Program can save those lives.
The fastest growing refugee crisis in the world today.
Absolutely. There was so much hope, Charlie, just a few years ago when South Sudan gained independence from Sudan. Since the 1950s, as you know, there's been a terrible war going on there. More than 2 million people were killed in that civil war. The United States and the Bush administration helped broker the separation of South Sudan. There was great jubilation and expectation that things would go well, and yet they haven't. There's oil under that ground, and now the two main tribes of South Sudan are fighting each other essentially over the oil, the leaders of those tribes.
Scott, I visited the Chad-Sudan border in 2009, and I remember the story of the South, as you point out, was one of hope. Some analysts say that this famine is a man-made crisis. Tell us about that and whether there are enough resources being allocated towards this.
Well, it is a man-made crisis. This isn't a massive crop failure because of the weather. 90% of South Sudan is farmable, and 4% of it is under cultivation, and it's all because of the civil war. These are terrible killing fields that these people are living in. Even United Nations refugee camps are overrun by militias and burned down. It is just one of the most vicious civil wars in the world, and that's why these people are destitute and literally starving to death. A famine declaration by the World Food Program is very rare, and yet it's happened here.
So where is hope?
Wow, Charlie, hope in the moment is coming from those aircraft that are flying over South Sudan, dropping all of that food, well, not millions, but hundreds and thousands of tons of food being dropped by aircraft now, as you can see in that picture. The World Food Program is about the only hope these people have. Much of what the World Food Program does is paid for by the United States of America. And as long as that money is continuing to flow, these people have a chance to survive.
Will it continue to flow in the present budget?
That's a very good question. The President Trump, is suggesting big cuts in our contributions to the United Nations and the World Food Program. It could really cut into what's possible there. The World Food Program was created in 1961 at the suggestion of the United States because millions of people had died in a famine in China. And it was decided then that that just was never going to happen again, and that any time a situation like this occurred, the world was going to come in and make sure those people don't starve to death. And now that principle is under threat.
You painted a very graphic picture. So people looking, once you see it, you can't act like you did not see that last night.
You can't unsee those images.
That's right.
UN World Food Program does critical life-saving work. It's great that you were able to highlight some of it, Scott. Thanks for that.